The largest tree in the world is so massive, it even earned itself the nickname General Sherman. It stands tall in California's Sequoia National Park, stretching its branches at 275 feet toward the sky. That's almost as tall as the Statue of Liberty. As for its weight, if we could place it on a scale, we'd need 400 elephants to balance things out. Its base stretches 36 feet in diameter, big enough to hide 2 sedans parked end to end. California is the last place on Earth where these colossal trees grow naturally. During the Ice Age, they flourished across North America and Europe, but as the glaciers retreated, so did the sequoias. Today, they thrive along the western slope of the Sierra Nevada range, relying on the melting glacier caps to quench their thirst. General Sherman gathers thousands of visitors every day, and the park's infrastructure caters to this. There's a short half-mile walk from the nearest parking lot that leads to the big green giant. Along the way, a stone marker outlines the shape and size of the tree's base, to give visitors a sense of its immense scale. This sassy sequoia is estimated to be around 23 to 2,700 years old and has witnessed centuries of change. It sprouted during the early days of the Roman Empire. When Europeans arrived in California in the late 1800s, they first tried to harvest the sequoias, thinking they had valuable wood. However, the sheer effort required to take down these giants was enormous for those days. They also soon figured out that this type of wood was a bit more brittle than expected, so they let these trees off the hook. As for its name, the tree shares it with General William Tecumseh Sherman, a 19th-century famous American public servant. Not far from General Sherman stands the world's second-largest tree, named General Grant. Discovered by locals years before General Sherman received its name, this tree has weathered its own share of challenges, including fires. But like its counterpart, it survived, mostly thanks to its thick bark and resilient hardwood. Now, as for the oldest tree, for a long time we've known it to be a Great Basin bristlecone pine named Methuselah, also found in California. It's been around for more than 4,800 years, way before the Egyptians built the pyramids of Giza. This tree's location is a bit of a secret to keep it safe from harm. Now, Methuselah and its friends grow way up high in California, Nevada, and Utah, where it's tough to survive. The place is cold with dry soil and fierce winds, but these strong timbers have figured out how to thrive, getting their nutrients from the hard, rocky ground up in the mountains. Their branches are twisted and gnarled because of the winds blowing in all directions as they reach maturity. It does make their appearance a bit messy, but it's an added layer of resistance for those trees during powerful storms. Their roots only feed the branches right above them, so if one part of the tree's roots fades away, only that part of the tree will be affected. Now, there's a new contender, however, for the same title of the oldest tree. In Chile, there's a Patagonian cypress called Gran Abuelo, which means great-grandfather in Spanish. It might even be older than Methuselah by about 500 years. This would mean this tree has seen people roaming around during the Bronze Age. To figure out a tree's age, we generally need to look inside its bark and count its rings. For the Gran Abuelo, though, scientists use complex math to estimate how old it is. Some experts aren't convinced by this method just yet. No matter which tree is older, both Methuselah and the Gran Abuelo have seen a lot of changes in their long lives. Each ring in their trunks holds info about the weather from the year it grew. Scientists can learn a ton about past climates on our planet by studying these ancient trees. Now, the world's tallest tree is also off-limit to visitors, but this is a recent safety measure. Its name is Hyperion and is located in Redwood National Park, California. Standing at a towering 380 feet, Hyperion is a coastal redwood, taller than the length of an American football field. Named after a character in Greek mythology, Hyperion was discovered in 2006 by 2 researchers. The park is home to other incredibly tall trees like Helios and Icarus, both also reaching heights of over 370 feet. The impressive height of redwoods in Northern California is due to their leaves and the region's climate. These trees absorb and store moisture from morning fog, and their sprouts promote growth after injury, allowing them to live for a very long time. However, their shallow roots make them susceptible to damage from hikers. Besides being a record holder, Hyperion's appearance may not live up to the hype. Witnessing its towering height from the ground is hard, and its trunk isn't that impressive. Hyperion is currently tucked away in a closed-off section with no official trail. But despite this, many tree enthusiasts have trampled through over the years, harming the habitat leading up to it. Trash has also been found along the way in the past. The park recently issued a statement urging visitors to steer clear of this tree. Otherwise, they could face hundreds of dollars worth of fines and even end up behind bars. The Tree of Life stands as a resilient symbol amidst the arid desert landscape of Bahrain. Nestled in the highest point of the country, this ancient tree defies odds, captivating visitors with its mysterious and inexplicable presence. It's surrounded by endless stretches of heated dunes in the Arabian desert. Because it stands alone against the desert backdrop, it has puzzled scientists and botanists for years. There's little to no rainfall over there. There are also no freshwater sources nearby. Despite the lack of moisture, the Tree of Life insists on flourishing, flaunting its green foliage. How it manages to survive in such harsh conditions led to some weird theories. Some speculate that the tree's roots go deep into the earth, reaching depths of up to 160 feet to access underground water reserves. Others suggest that the tree has adapted to its environment, drawing moisture from the surrounding sand grains through specialized mechanisms. One other interesting idea is that the Tree of Life lies at the site of the legendary Garden of Eden, getting its water from a mystical source. Apart from its scientific and cultural significance, the Tree of Life is an important tourist attraction for locals, luring in approximately 65,000 visitors each year. All for a tree. Now, Poland has its fair share of trees worth mentioning, all gathered in the Crooked Forest. It's a group of 400 trees that bend strangely. They all have a similar shape, curving sharply toward the sky in little J shapes, almost touching the ground. People have different ideas about why these trees look like that. Some think a heavy snowstorm covered them when they were young, pushing them down. Others believe the area's gravity might have affected how they grow. One interesting theory is that people who planted these trees back in the 1920s might have bent them on purpose. They wanted to use the curved shapes to expedite the furniture manufacturing process. So when the trees were about 10 years old, they interfered with their growth, making them develop in this odd shape. After the manipulation process was stopped, it left the trees in this weird position for decades. Either way, whatever happened to one tree happened to them all because they're all adjusted in the same way. So human intervention is the most likely explanation. Even though all the trees in the Crooked Forest look the same with their spooky bend, they still manage to grow tall and healthy. They've adapted to their difficult conditions, and somehow they've managed to keep growing upwards. This tree has poisonous bark, leaves, and even seeds. What's worse, those seeds can even explode. Wow. And that's not the kind of experience you want when traveling around tropical America. Meet sandbox tree, a 100-foot giant covered in conical studs. The tree itself looks unique, since the studs look almost like tiny pumpkins. But don't you dare come close and touch them. Just contemplate it from afar. Once the pumpkin-looking studs crack, they set the notorious seeds free. They travel at about 230 feet per second, and those have enough force to injure you. But hey, the sandbox tree is not that mean. It just doesn't want any competition, and that's why it tries so hard to send the seeds as far as it can, which is about 130 feet. So please, stay out of the way. Some trees are so dangerous they even have a warning sign. For example, a manchineel tree. It pretends to be totally innocent, and its fruits look like regular apples. But eating such an apple can be the last thing you do in your life. Well, that sounds serious. Touching this tree isn't safe either. I mean, even looking at that tree can be dangerous. Not kidding. And people can even banish it. Whoever tries to do that gets punished instantly. You try to cut the tree, it replies by squirting blinding ooze right into your eyes. Yeah, this sap can cause temporary blindness, and if it contacts the skin, you'll get burns and blisters. There's only one way to tame that tree. To do that, people first gotta burn the tree at the base and stand far away for sure. Then the fallen tree is left to dry in the sun. Once it's dry, it's safe to use. There are even used-to-be toxic pieces of furniture made of manchineel tree. Hey, pull up a chair. Now, this thing here, scientists call it jatropha fruit, but it's also known as black vomit nut. Ew! If you ever try to eat it, the first thing you'll experience is a burning feeling in the throat. Once it reaches your stomach, you'll have a severe stomachache. The result can be terrible. It can cause severe central nervous system depression, and it's not about being terribly sad. It's a physiological state when the breath rate is affected, the heart rate is decreased, and the person may even lose consciousness, not to mention a more serious aftermath. Ah, look at these heart-shaped leaves. They're so cute. Still, this tree's fruit isn't that cute. Pangium edule is native to Southeast Asia, and its fruit can be eaten, but it requires a lot of preparation. First, you need to grab those brownish clusters that look like pears. These are the fruit. Second, you need to boil the seeds. Yeah, you gotta get to those seeds through the pulp that looks soft, creamy, and possibly edible, but that it's not. Third, you need to either soak them or wrap them in banana leaves for 40 days for the hydrogen cyanide to be released. Yeah, that's great that hydrogen cyanide is slightly water-soluble and can be sort of washed out once the seeds are boiled and fermented. But isn't that too much effort? The thing is, these seeds are usually added to some dishes, so they're more like a spice, not an independent dish. Nope, the hydrogen cyanide thing ruined it for me. Now, some fruits require a lot of additional preparation, while others can be eaten only when 100% ripe. Raw elderberry is rich in vitamin C, which is good for you, and cyanide, which is not that good. These berries are quite popular, though. You can find them in pies, syrups, teas, jams, you name it. Fully ripe and cooked berries aren't dangerous. And nope, these berries aren't banned. National Jamaican fruit ackee has a truly unique taste. It's mild and buttery, and people who tried it say it tastes just like scrambled eggs. Just like with elderberries, it's safe to eat ackee only as long as it's fully ripe. So the importation of raw ackee fruit was banned in the US almost 50 years ago. The only edible part is the white creamy flesh itself. The pink flesh looks mouthwatering, but don't fall for it, it's highly toxic. Same with the black seeds. Well, let's interrupt this for a fun fact. People used to utilize ackee fruit for cleaning clothes, thanks to its laundering properties. Thing is, the fruit capsules have saponins that can create that lather we need for washing. Today, it's not that popular though, and very few people prefer it to manufactured soap. Soursop is one more fruit that doesn't seem to be available in the US. It's also referred to as guanabana and can release dangerous toxins, leading to some very unpleasant consequences if not ripe. Soursop fans, don't be sad. Chances are you might find some frozen pulp in supermarkets. The fruit itself is yummy. It tastes like a mix of pineapple and strawberry. However, this fruit is not FDA approved because of its safety issues. But if you ever eat soursop, remember to avoid the seeds, as they're toxic to us human mammals. Looky here! This is mango. It's safe and delicious. Now look over here. This one kinda looks like mango when it's green, but you certainly don't want to eat it. These fruits grow on a pong-pong tree, and one kernel is enough to finish any human being. But who said we gotta eat them? They can be used for deodorants. However, there are safer antibacterial options out there, so we'd best leave the pong-pong tree alone. Now, arboreally speaking, a tree doesn't necessarily have to be poisonous to be dangerous. The bunya pine, or false monkey puzzle tree, for instance, has extremely giant cones, larger than your head. Imagine the size of the nuts those cones carry. So the only real danger it poses is if a cone accidentally hits your head when falling. For the rest, the bunya pine is cool. If you boil the seeds, you'll get a super flavorsome tea. The nuts are gluten-free, so they can be part of any trendy diet. It's been around for quite some time, ever since the dinos roamed the planet. But now it's almost unique to Queensland, Australia. We all know the dose that makes the poison, right? Milky mangrove is another proof of the saying. It can be extremely useful for medicinal purposes and extremely toxic when used incorrectly. Yeah, it may not only be the dose, but also the science that makes the poison. This tree's sap can cause blisters, burns, and even temporary blindness, just like a manchineel tree. Here's why people also call it a blind-in-your-eye mangrove. Well, that makes sense. The bottle tree is mostly found in Namibia, so when traveling there and feeling thirsty, don't fall for that bottle-looking buddy. It has no water for you. The bottle tree gets its famous shape by the age of between 5 and 8 years and is designed to hold the water for itself. Now, if you dare try it, the consequences are, shall we say, sad. It's highly toxic for humans and animals, but for those toxins contained in the water, the tree would have been left with no moisture at all. Animals would have taken all the water from it. To avoid it, the bottle tree developed a sort of protection mechanism, mostly from animals, and apparently from some humans too, to stay well hydrated. Good advice for everyone. The last, but not the least, Jimpy Jimpy. Now, you probably came across a stinging nettle at least once in your life. The aftermath of the contact with the stinging nettle isn't quite pleasant. Nobody likes rash and burning sensations. Well, it's possible to say that harmless-looking Jimpy Jimpy, which is a distant relative of stinging nettle, has pretty much the same mechanism, but the consequences are different. It can even be fatal. Good news, there's an antidote. Depilatory wax or even sticky tape can help you out. The main problem is the little hairs stuck in the skin, and anything sticky, especially wax or tape, can help remove them. This is a first aid treatment, but it helps a lot. Have you ever sat in the bathroom wondering why toilet paper has fancy patterns on them? Well, if you're in there long enough, I guess you would finally get around to that. Turns out those prints actually serve a purpose. They use the prints to fluff up the paper a bit and make it more absorbent. The unique patterns help differentiate different companies' products on the market. Also, recycled toilet paper is a thing, but it's not as popular or well sold in the US as it is in Europe and Latin America. And that's all I have to say about that. Yes, one of the greatest mysteries of the snack world. Why do crackers have holes in them? Crackers start out as hydrated dough, which means that they have a lot of wet ingredients in them compared to dry ones like flour and salt. So when hydrated dough bakes, it releases steam as they get heated through. It results in something called an open crumb. It's a texture that is full of small air pockets. If we need a perfectly crispy cracker, the dough needs to release the steam that's accumulated in there. And that's where the holes come in handy, and all that crisp is thanks to them. Now, this star some old houses and barns have isn't something we pay attention to, but it's very familiar. It's known as a barn star, regardless of where it's located. Put it on a castle, it's still a barn star. No one is sure where exactly it takes its roots and what it originally meant, but they became particularly common for people to use at the end of the 19th century. Apparently, people used to paint geometric figures on their barns, and each one would mean something. The star was believed to bring good luck. Some people also interpret it as signifying welcome, and they started to put it on houses. Other people just say that they look cool and only serve a decorative purpose. Now, I'm pretty sure you've noticed that electrical plugs have holes in their prongs. But what are they used for? Well, a century ago, when the first plugs were designed, they had prongs with indents. Those indents would align with bumps inside the sockets to secure them there, so that it won't fall out. Later, the indents were replaced with holes, and it was for the same purpose. Modern-day plugs don't need holes to be secured inside. They're secured with friction and pressure. Holes are still useful though, but only during manufacturing. Some insert a rod through the holes to keep them steady while they wrap them in plastic. Other than that, holes have no use, and they are optional, so the manufacturers can decide if they have them or not. I was driving a couple of days ago and noticed those trees that you paint white at the bottom. Turns out it's a common thing to do. You see, the lower trunks of trees are painted white to help the process called sun scald. Sun scalding happens in the winter, and it's the process where extreme fluctuations in temperatures causes the bark of the tree to split. The layer of white paint serves as a long-lasting tree sunscreen. They also use this method of painting the tree trunks in orchards and tree farms. It's done to protect the young trees and give them the best possibility of surviving their first years. I've noticed that in older cartoons, quite a bunch of characters wear white gloves. I did some research and found out that back when animated movies were black and white, putting white gloves on characters was a way to make the hands stand out from the black bodies. Then animation evolved, but the gloves stayed as a Disney tradition. But there are other reasons too. Human hands make animal characters more humanized and relatable. Also, those gloves are way easier to animate, which speeds up the process. Also, many cartoon characters have 4 fingers, and there are reasons for that as well. First, only drawing 4 fingers makes the work of animators easier. While human figures were portrayed more realistically, animals and other characters could be fine with 4 fingers, and the creators were taking advantage of that. Also, there's a visual reason. Walt Disney himself told once that if this famous mouse had 5 fingers, his hands would look like a bunch of bananas. Growing up and watching morning cartoons before school, I never really understood why some of the adult characters didn't show their faces. Turns out, I was halfway to knowing the reason. The adults weren't the main focus of the shows. They were just there doing their adult stuff, while the main characters, often young-age characters or animals, were doing all the fun stuff. But the adult characters were always there to keep an eye on the main characters and help them if they asked. From an animation standpoint, it was also cheaper, easier, and way less time-consuming for the animators back then not to do the faces. This way, they wouldn't have had to do the faces or synchronize the lips for every speaking segment the character might have had. They could also just reuse old animations or change as little as possible if the writers changed the script at the last minute. It was saving companies lots of time and money. Now, we've all seen a house with 2 chimneys, but do they have an actual purpose, or is it purely for the aesthetic? Turns out they actually did have a purpose back in the day. In the older houses that are located in colder climates, it was fairly common to have one chimney with 2 or more separate flues, passages for conveying gases to the outdoors. Back in the day, houses weren't as airtight as these days, so they needed more heating sources to stay warm. People had fireplaces and several wood-burning stoves. Having several flues allowed residents to vent all those gases at once. Modern houses are built way more airtight and isolated, so they don't really need more than one heating source to stay warm and cozy, even in colder climates. So, the 2 chimneys serve more of an aesthetic purpose. Also, they're costly to remove, even if someone lives in an older house. Sometimes car steering wheels are grossly sticky, and here's why. Steering wheels are often covered with materials like vinyl or leather, and both of them are prone to collect surface residues like dust, food grease, oil, and sweat from your palms. Even if you don't feel like your hands are dirty when you touch the wheel, there's always something on them, and that material is happy to keep it. At some point, surface residue accumulates enough to give you that sticky feeling. You have 2 solutions. Either wear driving gloves or just wipe the steering wheel once in a while, and you're golden. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but some school buses have white roofs. Apparently, roofs are painted white to ensure that the inside is cool on hot days. The thing is that dark colors, especially black, absorb light and heat. That's why asphalt is especially hot on hot days, and that's why you feel hot in dark clothes in summer. A white color, on the other hand, reflects the light and the heat, and everything gets heated less fast. If you've traveled, You could have noticed that the same temperature feels different in different places. 80 degrees Fahrenheit in Nevada is much more tolerable, but the same 80 degrees Fahrenheit is a whole different story in Alaska or Florida. And the key here is humidity. It's the amount of water that's contained in the air. Nevada is the state with the lowest humidity, 38%, and Alaska has a humidity of 77%. Here's how it works. One of the ways your body tries to cool down during hot weather is by sweating. As the sweat evaporates, it takes away the heat as well, and it leaves. In humid settings, the sweat evaporates less, staying on your body and just dripping down. So not only do you stay all wet, but the heat also stays, so you feel hotter. But hey, don't sweat it. Just stay inside near the air conditioning all summer. Don't go out at all. Well, that's not going to work.
The 28-year-old patient shows up at the hospital with distressing symptoms. He explained to the doctors that he felt really bad chest discomfort and had been coughing badly for quite some time. The medical staff knew right away there was no time to waste, so he was scheduled for an X-ray. Weirdly, there was nothing unusual about the X-ray results. The patient just had a mass in his lungs that they needed to remove as soon as possible. Sure, it wasn't the best news for the man, but it was certainly nothing the doctors hadn't seen before. But that first opinion changed on the day of the surgery. Not only was the whole operation more difficult than they had initially expected, but the mass they removed from the patient had an unusual shape. When the probe was sent for further investigation, the doctors were puzzled. It was a small fir tree. The doctors that had participated in the operation thought that the man must have inhaled a seed which settled inside the man's lungs. After the seed grew into a sapling, its little needles started to damage the tissue surrounding it, which resulted in chest discomfort and coughing. As the story gained more popularity, scientists weighed in on the mysterious story, and they weren't so quick to accept it, saying it was most likely made up. On one hand, most plants need a lot of sunlight to grow, which isn't available in a human lung. More so, if it were that simple, we'd all have things growing in our bodies. Small seeds aren't that hard to swallow or inhale, right? This wasn't the only story about plants growing in a human lung that baffled scientists. In 2010, a man from Massachusetts was hospitalized after his lung collapsed. Again, this didn't seem to take doctors by surprise, as unfortunate as it was, because the patient already had a history of respiratory issues. Nevertheless, they discovered a mass inside the man's lung and removed it immediately. What they found was equally as surprising as the fir tree, a small pea plant. Only this time, doctors suggested that the man probably had peas for dinner. But that one simply went the wrong way and didn't end up in his stomach as it should have. Once it reached his lungs, the small pea got comfortable and began sprouting leaves. The truth is a bit more complex in this case, but it does make it more plausible. Turns out that the piece that was removed from the man's lung was only about half an inch long. Something that small doesn't qualify as a full-grown plant. But the seed was able to grow though. That's because a pea seed can sprout even without light. It naturally does that underground. The seed doesn't need to have any light at this point because the tiny seed has enough energy stored inside to help it grow to the level of the soil, where it gets the sunlight it needs to continue. Because of their relationship with the sun, plants are called autotrophs, or organisms that use exposure to light to feed themselves. A lot of us think that plants get their daily menu from the soil we place them in, but that's not feeding them. Plants need sunlight, water, and the gases in the air to produce glucose, the substance they use for food. This whole process is called photosynthesis and is performed by all plants, algae, and even a bunch of microorganisms, like the purple sulfur bacteria. Now back to our unfortunate human patient. While it's true that the pea seed might have germinated since it had sufficient moisture in there to survive, it didn't grow into a full-sized plant. It would have needed sunlight for that so that photosynthesis could begin. That's not to say it wasn't damaging or dangerous. A lot of other emergency room doctors have similar stories too, like this one coming from some doctors in Essex, whose patient initially seemed to have lost her dentures. The woman was elderly and already had memory problems, and they initially didn't give this mistake much thought. That wasn't until the woman was later discovered to have some other problems with her lungs too. It didn't take them long to connect the dots and figure out that the woman's upper dentures weren't all lost. They were just inside her body. The woman had swallowed them but didn't realize, and they got stuck at the bottom of her throat, also causing her respiratory problems. Not all such mishaps happened by accident. Another man in the UK wanted to offer his fiancée the engagement ring of her dreams, but it didn't fit his budget. So he came up with what he believed to be a clever plan. He went to the jewelry parlor and patiently waited for the jeweler to shift his focus from the ring for a split second. As soon as that happened, he swallowed the ring. The jeweler wasn't easily tricked and called the police. Once under the metal detectors, the man could only confess. The crafty romantic was escorted to a cell where he was expected to, pass the ring back to its rightful owner. It's not the only reason people were caught swallowing jewelry. A woman once came up to the emergency doctor complaining about stomach pains. There was nothing bizarre about her. On the contrary, she was a middle-aged woman, both fashionable and tidy. Her physical exam didn't reveal anything suspicious about her. But the x-ray they had to make sure did. As they were looking at the images, the doctors were perplexed. A whole lot of jewelry was stuck inside the woman's stomach and intestines. The medical staff obviously questioned her about how the objects got there, and her response was even more outrageous. She said she wanted to keep her jewelry safe from her husband, which she claimed had a bit of a habit of gifting her jewelry to other women. Nice guy. One other doctor remembered having a patient with a bottle cap stuck in his throat. The problem is, he didn't even notice he had a strange object stuck inside of him. It was simply discovered at a routine checkup. Fortunately, no surgery was needed to fish this one out. Doctors managed to get it out using a small medical net. They were curious how this man managed to get a bottle cap stuck in his throat and not even know it. His response was simple. He did remember drinking water some days prior, but he couldn't find the cap. He brushed the whole thing off and went on with his day. Other times, naughty things we do when we were young can come back to haunt us years later. A 30-year-old woman surely learned this lesson the hard way when she ended up in the emergency room with a stuffy nose. No medicine seemed to help, so she knew she had to get it examined by a professional. Once the doctors had a look, they realized she had some inflamed tissue up her nose and something that resembled a foreign object. It also looked like that object had been there for quite some time. They couldn't figure out what it was, so she was immediately taken to the operating room. What the surgeons removed was then taken to be further investigated, and it turned out to be some sort of material resembling paper. After they questioned her, the woman did remember having stuffed some paper in her nose when she was little, but was just as surprised as the doctors that the small piece had stayed there up her nose for over 20 years. Some extractions of foreign objects are more complicated than others. A kid ended up at the emergency room after he stuffed his brother's plastic construction toy up his nose. As the doctors were trying to carefully remove it, the kid coughed, and the toy went down his throat and into his stomach. Both the doctors and the kid's family patiently waited for the boy to pass the toy out to the final destination. That's probably because the kid wanted to give it back to his brother. But it's probably okay for the kid to keep it.
This spiky tree knows how to shoot, so you better stay away from it. It's called a sandbox tree, and you can find it in Amazonia. Initially, its seeds are formed in the shape of a small pumpkin. As time goes by, they harden and mature. But here comes the fun part. Just as they reach peak maturity, the seeds pop and shoot out at a speed of 150 miles per hour. They can even reach distances of 60 feet. That's what makes it so risky to be in their way during the blast process. Not to mention the seeds are poisonous too. Sure, some trees don't grow completely upright, but a tree that's altogether bent, with its branches even touching the ground, is a sight not to be missed. Such a tree, called the El Árbol de la Sabina, grows in Spain. Its shape depends on the wind, as the tree bends in its direction. As a result, not only does it often have a weird shape, but it can also change it completely during different times of the year. This flexible tree can reach more than 26 feet in height and tends to grow in the most improbable of locations, like on rocks. Now, how about a tree that's as old as dinosaurs? Discovered in 1994, the Wollemi pine tree species can be seen in the Blue Mountains of Sydney, Australia. It dates back to over 200 million years, so it's easy to believe dinosaurs might have even roamed around it. Since these trees are endangered and only 100 exhibits exist to this day in the wild, the scientists don't feel like disclosing their location. They want to make sure the trees are well preserved. Also, they're important for science, as studying them may help us uncover new information on the Earth's past. The bark of the tree can teach us many different things, like different temperature periods or exposure to various chemicals. The tree of life gets its name because it's able to withstand difficult conditions and actually thrive. Located in the desert outskirts of Bahrain, the Prosopis cineraria has a very deep root system, which allows it to survive in the scorching heat. The scientists still can't find out how it manages to get sufficient water. It's so special that it gathers over 50,000 tourists each year. La India Dormida in Panama is a mountainous area that's shaped like the body of a sleeping girl. It's part of a bigger, mysterious region called La Val de Anton, one of the largest inhabited dormant volcanoes in the world. And it has some pretty weird trees too, square ones. Even the rings of these trees, meaning the interior of their trunks, are the same shape, with sharp edges, sometimes even at a perfect 90-degree angle. Researchers have tried to piece together why these trees grow in this particular shape. They even tried taking samples of some of the trees and planting them elsewhere, to see if they retain that shape. It wasn't the case, so it's clear that the odd shape of the trees has something to do with the valley itself. Some people believe that a local farmer might have originally planted the trees in boxes, forcing the trees to grow like that, to reduce lumber waste, since round trees often end up being cut in sharp angled pieces. One of the oldest and biggest trees in the world is found in the Sequoia National Park of the United States. It's called General Sherman and stretches at 275 feet. It's almost as big as the Statue of Liberty. Its circumference is equally as impressive, as near the ground it is around 102 feet around. As for its age, we can only guess it to be between 2,300 and 2,700 years. That's an old tree! There are a lot of beautiful species of trees out there, but none as striking as the rainbow eucalyptus found in the Philippines. It almost looks hand-painted because of its multicolored layers of bark. This tree also shades its layers irregularly, which means it shows a lot of colors at once, from green to blue, then purple to orange, and then finally reaching brown. It's not used for decorating purposes, but rather for paper manufacturing. Located in Namibia is a tree that's also weird in shape and pretty dangerous, the bottle tree. Okay, in terms of shape, it's pretty self-explanatory, with a round trunk that narrows down toward the top. But the milky sap harvested from the tree is extremely poisonous. Legend has it that local hunters used to dip their arrows in it for added efficiency. It does look really beautiful during bloom season, with flowers that grow in pink and white with a red center. Now, to see a crooked tree every now and then isn't so special. But to see a whole forest of them, you'd have to travel to the Polish town of Gryfino. Near it, there is a forest made out of 400 oddly shaped trees. They've been curved with mechanical intervention. They didn't just grow like that, but their purpose remains a mystery to this day. Some have said it's because the wood from the trees was intended for furniture, or even for the construction of boats. But either way, the forest was eventually abandoned. A silk cotton tree has taken over the ancient Ta Prohm temples of Cambodia, creating a spectacular view. The massive branches of the silk cotton trees were free to grow over the structures for ages, going back as far as the 12th century. The temples have been restored and are accessible to tourists. The dragon's blood tree grows in the Canary Islands of northwest Africa. Locals used to say that once a dragon passes away, it transforms into a tree. Standing at an impressive 50 feet in length, the tree is named like that due to its red sap, which can be harvested from the bark. The red substance to this day is used for dyes and in medicine. One of the biggest, oldest, and most impressive trees in the world is the Sunland baobab tree. It's 72 feet high and has a circumference of 155 feet. It's located in South Africa. What makes it even more spectacular is the fact that it is naturally hollow inside. So, a small lounge was set up inside the tree back in 1933. It initially could support up to 20 individuals, but it can now host up to 60 people. Not to mention, the tree dates back over 6,000 years. The silver birch tree spread across Scandinavia and northeast Europe and found a way to reflect light. Its bark became lighter in color, and during the colder season, when its branches also freeze over, the site is something of a natural winter wonderland. It also developed a partnership with a fungus that connects to its roots and fans out under the forest, gathering up nutrients that trees can't reach. For these services, the tree gives the fungus sugars in return. The birch's companion is dangerous and shouldn't be consumed by people. It's easy to recognize with the classical scarlet-topped red-sprinkled mushroom head. A natural festival not to be missed is Japan's cherry blossom season. The pinkish-white blossom is deeply rooted in Japanese culture, going hand in hand with a local saying called Mono no Arare. Was I even close on that? Which relatively translates to the fact that everything is temporary, regardless of how perfect or beautiful it is. Should you ever visit Japan, you'll quickly see that the cherry blossom symbol is everywhere, from company logos to even clothing or household items. Yosemite National Park in California once had an amazing tree structure that was turned into a tunnel. It was a coast redwood tree, stretching 227 feet tall. It was nicknamed Wawona, the Native American word for the hoot of an owl. The tree fell in 1969 because of a heavy snow, but it survived as an ecosystem for animals, plants, and insects. It's now called the fallen tunnel tree. One tree species known as Farcapazvivervet, well, you read it, is the rarest plant on Earth. The Guinness World Record book recorded one single tree of its kind off the coast of New Zealand. It wasn't always that lonely, but humans brought goats to the island, which nipped at every other member of its family. Ow! Luckily, scientists are looking at ways to plant new specimens.
In many cities and forests, there are color markings on trees that look weird to an unknowing spectator. In fact, most such markings are used for two reasons: to make the trees to be cut or left alone stand out from the rest, and to make an owned forest boundary line visible. There are no specific rules for the color or shape of markings, but the most universal ones for cutting are blue lines, and the markings for preserving trees are usually orange or yellow. Trees within city limits are usually marked for cutting with red, orange, or yellow lines or dots. If you see such a marking on a tree and you have a car parked nearby, best move it somewhere farther away so that the tree doesn't fall on it when it's cut down. Trees in a forest can be marked for preserving because they have good cavities for wildlife to make homes in, or there are nests on their branches. It's a frequent practice to leave the surrounding trees intact too, so that the birds and animals in that particular tree are not disturbed. Large and healthy seed and nut-bearing trees are also marked for preserving because many animals and birds feed on their seeds and nuts. Unhealthy trees can be preserved too, surprisingly, if woodpeckers seem to like them. It means there are many bugs inside those trees that the birds use as food. Color markings on trees in a forest might also mean someone owns the forest up to a certain boundary and decided to show it. These markings can be made in any color and shape, but they always have two specific features you can't miss. One is that the markings go in a more or less straight line, which is logical because it's a boundary of a territory. And the second feature is that, according to the marking rules, the markings always have to be close to each other, so that the next one is clearly visible from the one you're looking at in both directions. Some believe that yellow markings are left on female ginkgo trees growing around cities of the US, but there's no hard evidence of that. Still, you can find a detailed map of such trees in New York or Washington, D.C., for example. Female ginkgos do deserve a map of their own, since they bear fruit that smell really, really awful. If you ever had a piece of butter gone rancid in your kitchen, you probably know that odor. The trees were brought to the U.S. in the 18th through 19th centuries, when a drive for experimentation and all things exotic was going strong. And since ginkgos are very sturdy trees and can withstand harsh conditions, they grew popular in the country. Many cities planted them for green decoration purposes, but unfortunately, lots of them turned out to be females. To avoid the trees bringing their unpleasant smell into the cities, they've been sprayed with a special solution that prevents them from fruiting. The solution is safe for both people and animals, so there's no need to worry about being in the vicinity while maintenance workers spray the trees. Color markings can be seen in the streets too, not only on trees. If you walk around the town and see a red line on the pavement, for example, it means there's a power line or cable beneath you. These lines are marked red to stand out the most, because if they're damaged while digging, it can lead to a lot of trouble, maybe even more than with gas pipes. Orange lines mean essentially the same, only those signify there's a telecommunication or signal line or cable. These things don't carry power, so disrupting them is not as bad as damaging power cables, but it would still cause a lot of inconvenience to people around the block. For example, breaking a fiber optic cable might shut down the internet in a large area until the damage is repaired. A yellow line means there's natural gas, oil, steam, petroleum, or some other conduit of flammable material underneath. Lines are usually drawn in such a way as to show the direction the pipe is laid down below, and the line itself is in its center. Yellow is as much a color of warning as red, which makes perfect sense. A broken gas pipe and a spark are a recipe for a huge disaster. Green lines signify there's a sewer or storm drain underground. Breaking a sewer facility can cost an excavation worker their entire career, and for a good reason. Imagine what kind of a mess it would result in. And apart from the sewer contents breaking free and creating chaos on the surface, damaging the pipeworks will almost certainly result in huge costs of repairs and lots of inconvenience for hundreds of people living close by. Since water is blue, it makes sense for city markings signifying a source of drinking water to be blue too. Damaging such a source is not as bad as breaking a petroleum pipe or a power cable, but it still is a cause of trouble for people around. In big cities, though, it's more of a nuisance than something serious, because potable water is normally easily accessible. Breaking a water pipe or main brings more problems to the excavating or construction project itself. The water will flood the surroundings, making it a mess to deal with as quickly as possible. Purple markings also mean water, but not of a drinking kind. Lines of this color signify there's a source of irrigation or reclaimed water down below. Such water is taken from sandblasting or power washing and is normally used for industrial or gardening purposes afterwards. It's not meant for drinking, but the results of breaking through a pipe carrying this water are pretty much the same as with potable water. The mess will be more than real. Pink markings on the ground are left by land surveyors. When there's a legal argument for property limits, for example, an independent surveyor will leave pink lines on the ground to mark the boundaries. These can also be left at proposed construction sites for the same reason. White lines, dots, and crosses mark out the territory for proposed excavation routes or limits. It means there will soon be digging done within those premises. White markings usually indicate the exact place the excavation should be done at. They're the first step before any actual work can be performed. Later, city maintenance workers will find out if there are any facilities beneath that spot that should be avoided. If there are none, or if there's no conflict between the digging and the underground facilities, more about that later, the excavation can begin. City markings can also be drawn not as lines, but as other shapes. For instance, you might see an H shape on the ground. The two parallel lines signify the edges of the pipe or cable below, while the center line connecting them is there to make it easier to measure the width. There might also be the name of the company that laid down the pipe or cable next to the H shape. A diamond shape is another frequent marking on the ground. It might or might not have two parallel lines marking the edges of the conduit below, while the diamond shape itself means the approximate size of the thing beneath your feet. Some markings look more like graffiti, with lots of cryptic symbols and letters, but these are usually abbreviations and signs for the city maintenance or construction workers. For example, you might see a white cross or square drawn on the ground to mark a proposed excavation site. The workers will often write a "No" followed by an abbreviated name of the facility below. You might think it means no excavation should be done here, but it's the exact opposite. No means no conflict between the power lines, pipes, or whatever other facility is buried underneath and the proposed excavation plan. The abbreviations are also written in the color of the facility they designate. For instance, if there's no G written in yellow paint in a white square, it means the site can be excavated without fearing that a gas pipe below, hence the G, will be disturbed. And if there's a telecommunications cable underneath, the city services will often draw an orange "No" and then an abbreviated name of the company that laid down the cable. Another way to say the same thing is to draw an abbreviated facility type and cross it out. A yellow G, sometimes in a circle, means a gas pipe below, and if it's crossed out, there should be no worries about excavating in this area. No gas pipes will be damaged. In Florida and in some parts of the Caribbean coast, you can find an unusual tree. Externally, it doesn't look special at all. A gray trunk, green leaves, and fruit similar to small apples. What you must remember is never to pluck these apples and never stand next to the tree, especially if it's raining. This is the manchineel tree, which is considered the most dangerous in the world. Its trunk, bark, branches, and fruit contain poisonous juice. One drop of this corrosive acidic liquid can harm your skin. A lot. The tree can secrete this juice, and if you accidentally touch it, you risk burning your hand. When it rains, water droplets fall on the tree and mix with the poison. Water can also bounce off the bark and get on your skin. That's why you shouldn't stand nearby either. There are almost no other shrubs or mushrooms growing around. Animals avoid these trees, and people don't chop them and don't pluck the fruit. You can't make a bonfire from their branches. Burning wood emits poisonous smoke that can damage your eyes. Locals know this tree well, but tourists and travelers might accidentally get harmed. That's why most manchineel trees are marked with paint or have a warning sign. To see the next amazing tree, we need to visit the wettest place on Earth. Welcome to the village of Mawsynram in India. The Bay of Bengal isn't that far away, and all the moisture that condenses there moves toward the village. Because of this, the village literally lives in a huge wet cloud. Downpours rarely stop here. Interestingly, people have adapted to life in such a place. They walk and work under special homemade umbrellas made of reeds. But the coolest thing is bridges. They're built so that people can move around the village. Because of the endless rains, it's impossible to construct ordinary bridges and roads here. Building materials simply don't have time to solidify. Water erodes them and turns them into porridge. Luckily, there's very rich vegetation in that area. For example, Indian rubber trees. Their strong roots grow not underground, but on the surface. With the help of special frames and fasteners, people have learned to control how these roots grow. Let's say a tree is next to a small pit. You need to make a bridge from one end of this pit to the other. You direct the growing tree roots in the needed direction. Over time, the roots penetrate the ground and strengthen under endless downpours. It takes about 15 years to create one bridge. One of the most colorful trees in the world grows in the warm rainforests of Southeast Asia. Unlike other trees with colorful leaves, this one has a colorful, bright trunk. From a distance, it seems as if someone has spilled different paints on the tree. The colors shimmer like drops of gasoline on asphalt. The pattern is so beautiful and bright that it's difficult to believe that nature did this. The tree is called the rainbow eucalyptus. The colors on its trunk are constantly changing, depending on the time of year. At first, there are more bright green shades. Then they're replaced with red, orange, and purple. The last color is brown, and then this colorful cycle repeats. The next tree grows in the U.S. To find it, you'll need to drive along Vashon Highway. The road is surrounded by dense forest. Keep going until you see a bus stop. Then it's time to make your way through the thicket. Bushes, dirt, branches, birdsong, and that's it! You notice quite an ordinary tree. There are hundreds of similar trees around you, but look up and you'll see why this one is so unique. A rusty red bicycle is stuck inside the trunk. It looks as if it's grown into the tree, literally. One wheel and a handlebar are still visible, while everything else is swallowed by the tree. Now the bike looks like part of the forest. The tree has been growing this way for more than 50 years. It all started in 1954. One boy got a bicycle, but he was not very happy about the gift because of its thin tires and uncomfortable handlebars. One day, the boy forgot the bike in the forest when he was playing there with his friends. He just left it leaning against a young tree and went home. The tree continued to grow, and sometime later, the bike became a part of it. The largest trees in the world are redwoods, and one of them, a giant sequoia, is the largest of them all. It grows in California's Sequoia National Park. The tree is called General Sherman, and it's more than 2,000 years old. The volume of this tree is 52,500 cubic feet, which is about half the size of an Olympic swimming pool. A house with several bedrooms, bathrooms, and a spacious living room would easily fit inside the tree. Despite its age, General Sherman is far from the oldest tree. In the park, there are redwoods that are more than 3,000 years old. The tallest tree in the world grows in California, too. It also belongs to the sequoia family. It's called Hyperion, and its height reaches 380 feet. That's 1/3 of the Eiffel Tower's height. The oldest tree in the world is the Great Basin bristlecone pine. It's almost 5,000 years old. It was already growing during the times of ancient Egypt and ancient Greece. But not many people have seen this tree. It might be one of the reasons why it's survived to this day. The tree grows in harsh conditions. It's been hit by strong cold winds for thousands of years, but this has only made its wood more durable. Also, because of bad weather conditions, the tree has been growing very slowly, which also contributed to its longevity. Thanks to the slow growth and dense wood, now the pine isn't afraid of insects, fungi, rotting, or erosion. And the lack of vegetation around the bristlecone pine makes it protected from forest fires. Its exact location is kept secret from the public, so that no one can harm the tree. By the way, trees appeared on our planet about 385 million years ago. Some of them are still growing in colonies that clone themselves. It means that in place of an old tree, a new one appears, and it has a similar genetic structure. Nowadays, there are trees whose family lines began in the times of dinosaurs. These trees look like they've been ripped up out of the ground, turned upside down, and planted again. Baobabs are some of the most beautiful trees in the central part of southern Africa. Their branches grow in such an unusual way because they're too thin for the wide girth of the tree. These trees' trunks resemble sponges. They expand and absorb moisture during the rainy season. Elephants drink this moisture during a drought. They tear off parts of the tree to quench their thirst. At night, flowers bloom on baobabs. They smell like sour milk and attract bats. This tree looks like a bottle. No wonder it's called the bottle tree. It grows in Namibia and attracts many tourists. But don't get too close to the tree because it's one of the most dangerous on Earth. Milky juice flows inside the trunk. It's highly toxic to the human body. But on the bright side, the trees have beautiful pink-white leaves with a red core. There's a tree growing in Western Australia that was once used as a prison. A cell for criminals existed inside the Boab prison tree for a long time. People were usually kept there temporarily, just for one night. After that, they were taken to their final destination. The prison was built more than 1,500 years ago and has been perfectly preserved to this day. Tourists visiting this place can sneak a peek inside. One of the most amazing trees in the world is called the Tree of Life. It grows in Bahrain's desert. The tree has been standing on top of this sandy hill for more than 400 years, surrounded by miles of sand. It's extremely hot here, and there's no moisture. But despite this, the tree has green leaves and continues to grow. So far, scientists haven't figured out yet how the tree gets moisture and nutrients. There are only places with oil deposits around. Locals think the tree is sacred. After all, it demonstrates the magic of life and the power of nature. Some scientists are sure that it's all about the roots. They go so deep that they can reach underground sources of water.
Well, if you don't have enough to worry about, here's another fear unlocked. You might turn into the next meal of a meat-eating plant. This type of plant has appeared in video games like Super Mario. That's why it looks familiar. So, we wonder here at Brightside, what would happen if a hypothetical giant Venus flytrap captured you? After all, these plants aren't picky eaters. They have sensitive trigger hairs, which cause the plant's iconic hinged jaws to snap shut. Its leaves are equipped with tiny bristle-like structures that interlock when the trap closes, making it difficult for prey to escape. Once it happens, the plant begins secreting digestive enzymes to break down the prey's soft tissue. The digestion process in carnivorous plants takes several days. During that time, the plant extracts nutrients from the dissolved prey. In our hypothetical situation, it would take a long time for the plant to consume you, and since the process would be extremely slow, most likely you'd be able to free yourself before significant harm occurs. In any scenario, it would be extremely hard for the plant to digest a human completely. The anatomy and digestive processes of Venus flytraps are adapted to deal with insects, not large animals like you. Even if they were larger, they would still not be able to eat you. Comforting? Somewhat. The Venus flytrap primarily consumes insects, spiders, and other small invertebrates. Researchers have found out that this plant can digest small pieces of human flesh, but the largest representatives measure just a few inches. So it's highly unlikely for a Venus flytrap or similar carnivorous plant to pose any serious threat to humans. Barry Rice is an astrobiologist from California, and he thought about this question too. In a rather cringe-worthy experiment, Rice applied his Venus flytraps with skin fragments peeled from his toes affected by the athlete's foot infection. Those skin pieces, divided into 4 equal portions, were carefully inserted into the jaws of 4 Venus flytrap plants. After a week, Rice cautiously pried open the plant's mouth to assess the progress. To his surprise, the skin chunks were nearly completely digested, contrary to his initial expectation of them remaining intact. It means that Venus flytraps can indeed consume human flesh. Yet the prospect of these plants engulfing an entire human is unequivocally dismissed. Rice restricted his experiments to a specific tissue type, and there's no indication that the plant could break down sturdier components like bone or cartilage. The size limitations and the slow digestion process also act in favor of the person's survival. Now, when it comes to size, Venus flytraps can grow to about 5 inches in diameter. Each plant has about 6 stems with leaves that are hinged and lined with tooth-like edges. These flytraps are originally from North and South Carolina. But at one point, they decided to take a trip, and now you can see them in places like Florida and New Jersey. They like the moist, acidic soil vibe found in forest understories. They need loads of humidity and sunlight to thrive. They lure insects with their reddish-lined leaves and sweet-smelling nectar. When a bug lands on their jaws, they don't snap shut right away. This process turns into a 20-second dance show. The petals stay open if the bug doesn't make at least 2 moves. It prevents random debris from getting trapped. On the second move, the plant goes from a happy convex shape to a hungry concave one, closing its jaws in less than a second. The bristles on the leaves act like jail bars, keeping the insect from pulling a Houdini. On the third move, digestion mode activates. Juices break down the bug. The plant reopens after 5 to 12 days, and whatever couldn't be digested just falls out. Actually, you can give a Venus flytrap a little touch without hurting yourself. In fact, they're pretty soft to the touch. Yes, these types of plants can't eat us, but it doesn't mean they're not spooky. For instance, this gigantic carnivorous plant can even devour rodents. It was discovered in the Philippines. The pitcher plant, rated as the world's second largest, can reach over 16 feet in height. It attracts prey with special nectar around its mouth. Once an animal is lured in, the plant's fluid, which contains enzymes and acids, starts breaking down the drowned victim's carcass. While such plants can eat rats and frogs, cultivating them as mouse traps is impractical due to the sheer number of mice in urban areas. Here's how plants become meat eaters. Around 70 million years ago, during the era of dinosaurs, certain plants underwent a genetic mutation that turned them into carnivores. In a study, researchers explored the evolution of carnivorous plants, focusing on 3 related species: the Venus flytrap, the water wheel plant, and the sundew. First, the plant's entire genetic code doubled, which allowed its genes to become more varied. Some genes changed to make traps out of leaves and use roots for catching prey. As the plants got nutrients from the prey, it didn't need as many genes for regular leaves and roots. Over time, evolution fine-tuned the roots and leaves for trapping. This shows how plants that hadn't been carnivores before changed to become really good at catching and eating animals. It helped them survive in soils that didn't have many nutrients by getting nutrients from the animals they caught. Now, carnivorous plants are rare, but they are a big family. There are more than 700 species found all around the world on every continent except Antarctica. They're not just hanging out in damp swamps and jungles. North America takes the crown for the highest number of different carnivorous plant species. We're so proud of that. Venus flytraps are the ones with the iconic snap trap. Pitcher plants, on the other hand, work with a pitfall trap. It's straightforward. Their leaves are hollow and filled with water and digestive acids. Any bug that falls in ends up drowning and being slowly digested over time. Some pitcher plants have waxy leaves to make bugs slide inside more easily, while others use chemicals to reduce water tension, making any insect that lands in their trap instantly sink and drown. Let's move on to sticky traps. Some plants, like sundews, use active sticky traps. They have tentacles all over their leaves that stick to insects. The tentacles close when an insect lands on them, suffocating the bug. Then there are passive sticky traps. Think of them like sticky mouse traps in a garage. Insects that land on these tiny sticky tentacles just get stuck, and the plant sends out digestive acids to turn them into a liquid snack. Now let's get to the showstopper: suction traps. Bladderworts are the stars here, pulling in bugs and other prey faster than you can blink twice. They love snacking on mosquito larvae. But big ones can even grab small tadpoles by the tail and devour them from bottom to top. Have you had your lunch yet? Okay. Then there's the lobster pot trap. This one is a unique trap where the plant's roots are hollow and have openings. Sharp hairs force tiny bugs and larvae into the roots. The bugs can't turn around and they end up heading straight for the plant's stomach. Fun fact: not all carnivorous plants need digestive enzymes. Some team up with helpful bacteria and focus on physical traps instead. Carnivorous plants don't grow only on land. There are underwater ones too. The water wheel plant and bladderworts live beneath the surface. Even deserts have their own carnivorous plant players. If you see carnivorous plants in the wild, resist the urge to take them home. Unfortunately, many of these plants are endangered because people poach them from their natural habitats. Even the famous Venus flytrap is at risk of extinction. There are no carnivorous plants dangerous for us humans, but this one might give you a fright because of its terrifying appearance. On the other hand, it may help you resist the temptation to take these plants home as souvenirs. Sweet dreams!
Don't these fruits look delicious? Well, what if I tell you that they can blow up in your face? These are the fruits of the sandbox tree. It's a giant that can grow up to 200 feet and stays green all year round. It grows in tropical places like the Amazon rainforest and some parts of Africa. Almost everything about this monster tree is poisonous. Its bark, leaves, and even seeds. The tree looks unfriendly. It's covered in small conical studs. Its fruits, which look like small pumpkins, not only are poisonous, they have their own twist. When they're ripe, they burst open and shoot seeds out at super fast speeds. It's not all that bad though. Sandbox tree wood is light, so it's handy for making canoes. Long ago, indigenous people made arrow poison from its sap too. The wood is also used for making furniture, and the tree's seeds can be used to make biodiesel and soap. We know holly as those berries used in Christmas decorations, but the holly tree has a very long history. It was around even before the dinosaurs disappeared. Over millions of years, different types of holly trees have adapted to different environments, like mountains and forests, and some have become extinct. Today, they can still be found in many parts of the world. Holly trees have pretty red berries, but don't eat them. Only birds can do that. These berries are toxic to humans and can even be lethal. These things, although they're called berries, are actually a type of fruit called drupes. They come in different colors like red, brown, black, and sometimes green or yellow. Some trees are so dangerous they come with a warning sign, like the manchineel tree. Its fruits resemble regular green or yellow apples, but eating one could be the last thing you ever do. Every part of it, from the bark to the leaves to the fruit, contain toxins. Eating it causes throat discomfort and stomach problems. Even touching it might be risky. Forget trying to get rid of it. Anyone who tries to cut it down gets punished instantly. It shoots out a blinding ooze that can make you temporarily blind. And if that sap touches your skin, you'll end up with burns and blisters. Jatropha fruit looks like a delicious apricot-like thing, but it has another name, black vomit nut. If you dare to eat it, your throat will feel like it's on fire. Then, your stomach will hurt a lot. It can even mess up your breathing and heartbeat, making you feel really sleepy and even passing out. The tree originally comes from the warm regions of the Americas, like Mexico and Central America, but now it's found in many tropical and subtropical places worldwide. In some places, people eat edible varieties of the Jatropha plant. In Mexico, they roast and grind the seeds to make snacks or dishes like tamales and soups. The seeds can actually be useful. They're full of oil and other stuff like protein and sugar. This can be used to make a special kind of fuel called biodiesel. But please, don't use the oil from this plant for cooking. Check out these leaves. They're shaped like little hearts. Aren't they cute? And if you find these brownish clusters that kinda resemble pears, those are the fruit of this tree from Southeast Asia, called Pangium eduli. When you open them, there's this soft, creamy pulp, and even though it looks yummy, it's not. However, there is an edible part of this fruit, its seeds. They're usually used as seasoning and spice in dishes, not eaten on their own. Cooking them is kinda troublesome though. First you have to get them out of the fruit. Next, you boil them. After that, you bury them in ash, banana leaves, and earth for 40 days. Don't be surprised. Soaking or wrapping can help wash out some of its most toxic chemicals, hydrogen cyanide. But after that stage, they become quite healthy and good for your health, packed with vitamin C and iron. Once prepared, these seeds are used in various dishes. In Indonesia, for example, they're ground up to make a thick black gravy called rawon. In Malaysia and Singapore, one of the dishes is chicken cooked with these seeds. Even tribes in Borneo use them to make a sour-tasting fermented fish dish. Look at this round, shiny brown shell with a seed inside. It's surrounded by a textured husk, kind of like hickory nuts. Well, these nuts contain something called tannic acid, which is poisonous to animals like cows and even to humans. Even the leaves, shoots, and bark of this tree can be a bit toxic. The tree is called Ohio buckeye, or Texas buckeye, or simply horse chestnut. Fun fact, Native Americans had a way to eat those. They boiled the nuts to remove the poison. They also used them in various ways, like making necklaces or extracting tannic acid for leather. The tree itself isn't the best for making things because it's soft and light. And because of its big, messy fruits, it's not the best choice for a tree along the street. But people seem to really like it in Ohio. They even make a candy that looks like the nut, dipping peanut butter fudge in chocolate. It's a popular treat, especially during Christmas and college football season. Beware of pokeberries. They're those tempting, juicy-looking berries you might spot in late summer or early fall. While birds and animals can eat them without any problems, they're poisonous to people. They come in grape-like clusters of purple-black color, and the plant itself stands tall with vibrant purplish-pink stalks up to 8 feet high. But eating just a handful could be extremely harmful, or even lethal. Another grape-like thing is called the Canada moonseed vine. It has leaves and bunches of fruits that kind of resemble grapes, but they can be extremely dangerous. To avoid this mistake, take a closer look at the seeds inside the fruit. While grapes typically have 2 to 4 round or oval seeds, moonseed fruits have just 1 seed in each, and it's shaped like a weird mix between a crescent moon and Pac-Man. In June, you can also find this beautiful vine in the forest called American bittersweet, or bittersweet. The vine is quite strong and can grow long, woody stems that twine around other plants, sometimes even choking them. But the most important part is its orange fruits, about the size of a pea. Once again, poisonous to humans, but loved by birds. The plant got its name because these fruits resemble those of common nightshade, which was also called bittersweet by colonists. This helps to differentiate it from a similar-looking plant called oriental bittersweet from Asia. But it's pretty, so it can serve as a beautiful decoration. Speaking of nightshade, its name is quite telling. The plant's dark cherries are super dangerous, even in tiny amounts. What's worse, it can be easily mistaken for twinberry honeysuckle or other fruits. One way to spot it is by its pointy oval-shaped leaves. It usually blossoms from June to September. Funny enough, this plant belongs to the same family as tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and potatoes. This family also includes dangerous plants like tobacco, belladonna, and mandrake. The last creepy plant is called doll's eyes. These plants have white berries, and eating them can stop your heart and even lead to the worst outcome. The berries look creepy, like a bunch of small eyeballs connected by red branches. It's pretty creepy looking, right? You can find these scary plants on the eastern side of the US and Canada. They bloom over summer. Some people grow these plants in gardens for their unique appearance, but they need specific conditions. Also, be careful around unfamiliar plants, berries, and fruits. Don't forget to check them up online. Fantastic beasts live in movies, books, and our reality. And some of the weirdest creatures live in the ocean. They're called sea slugs. Some of them have the ability of plants to feed on sunlight. Others look like dragons and are poisonous like snakes. Let's study some of the most incredible species. So the first one on our list is an animal that hangs out in the ocean, eats algae, and acts like a plant. A unique variety of green sea slugs can photosynthesize. Simply put, it can feed on sunlight and it will be enough to eat until it's full. But that's not even the coolest part. This creature, which looks like a snail with a green leaf on its back, gets the features of plants by changing its genes. The green sea slug gets its photosynthesizing abilities from the algae it eats. And here's how it happens. When the slug bites off the sea plant, it also consumes a small portion of cells called chloroplasts. The slug's intestines absorb these particles and connect them with the slug's cells. Chloroplasts mix with the animal's genes and, with the help of chemical compounds, allow the animal to produce chlorophyll, a green pigment that captures sunlight. The more chloroplasts this creature eats, the better its photosynthesis abilities are. By the way, these cells not only allow the slug to feed on light, but also color it in green pigment, which helps the animals disguise themselves among the grass and hide from predators. Some species of these sea inhabitants can eat algae just once, and it will be enough to feed on sun rays for the rest of their lives. By the way, they don't live long, just 1 year. Scientists observed how sea slugs didn't eat anything after absorbing chloroplasts. The animals simply sunbathed in the sun while their cells absorbed the sun's energy and then converted it into food. At the same time, the slugs multiplied, interacted with each other, and led an active lifestyle. The researchers also found that this ability could be inherited. That is, small slugs already had algae genes despite the fact that they had never eaten them. We've just met one species of these strange animals, and in total there are about 2,000 kinds of sea slugs, and they're all unique. First of all, they differ from one another with their colorful patterns. Sea slugs are some of the most colorful creatures in the world. Yellow, mother of pearl, blue, purple, spotted, and many others. Some of them seem to appear with a negative color, while others are painted in acidic psychedelic colors. However, slugs themselves don't even suspect how beautiful they are because they don't distinguish colors. The bright patterns target predators, warning them that these slugs are toxic. Some species, such as the blue dragon, are so venomous that they pose a serious danger even to humans. So don't touch them if you see them in the ocean. But the most crazy thing about these creatures is how they produce their venom. Blue dragons are those rare animals who hunt prey bigger than them in size. Moreover, the creatures they love to eat look much weirder than the sea slug. They're like guests from another dimension. These are the pelagic siphonophore, the blue button, and the violet snail. In addition to their strange appearance, these creatures have venomous tentacles. But the blue dragon is not afraid of them. It uses their venom against them. It absorbs the toxins of these little monsters, concentrates it in itself, and makes it even stronger. The sea slug then uses this venom to sting prey and enemies. Therefore, many predators avoid the dragon if they see it in the water. In humans, the sting of the blue dragon can cause nausea, allergies, and other health problems. Besides the coloring, all sea slugs have different tentacles. Green slugs, as you've seen, have small legs, but the tentacles of the blue dragon resemble wings. The limbs of some slugs look like spikes. There's a species that looks like a mutant jellyfish with wide tentacles. This is the lion's mane nudibranch. Its fins and its head are like a hood. While hunting, it wraps the prey from all sides and squeezes it. Japanese slugs with wavy tentacles are also found in nature. And by the way, these slugs can regenerate their limbs, hearts, and even heads. Scientists watched such a creature lose its head, but its body and the cut-off head were still alive. This is probably the only animal of this size that can fully restore its body after the loss of vital organs. All these differences depend on the slug's lifestyle. Some like to swim in the water, and others crawl along the seabed. Food preferences also affect the development of their body shape. And the diet of sea slugs is also quite strange. Some sea slugs eat algae and feed on sunlight. Others eat jellyfish and sea anemones. And some species, like blue dragons, can eat one another. Now look at this beast. It seems like another species of sea slug, but actually, it's something different. This is a sea pig, which is a type of sea cucumber. Their difference is that the cucumber moves along the seabed using caterpillar-like feet, and the pig walks on longer legs. This creature, the size of an adult's finger, can't swim, even though it lives in water. It just walks on the seabed in search of food. This transparent beast that looks like an elephant and a jellyfish does an important job here. It doesn't hunt or hurt anybody. It's just chilling and feeding on carrion. By eating decaying materials, sea pigs make a significant contribution to the ocean's ecosystem, purifying the water from rot and biological debris. They are like vacuum cleaners that clean the ocean of garbage. This creature is harmless, but predatory fish are afraid to approach it because of its disgusting taste. In addition, the bodies of sea pigs are impregnated with poison dangerous to other marine life, but not to everyone. Watching these pigs, scientists often see how small king crabs cling to them. These beings are easy prey for predators, so they need protection. Sea pigs perform this function perfectly, but still they have enemies that can harm them, and these are parasites. Although sea pigs are not rare animals, scientists know little about them. The reason is the strange bodies of these marine inhabitants. They are very fragile organisms living under high pressure. If you try to raise them to the surface, they will fall apart like artificial jelly. Therefore, you won't find them in aquariums and laboratories. All scientists can do is observe them in their habitat. For this reason, we still don't know the lifespan of these fantastic creatures. We descend into the ocean's black depths to see one of the creepiest creatures on the planet. It has wrinkled skin, weak muscles and bones, and it looks as if it was already born old. The blood shines through its thin skin and paints the whole body in a pinkish hue. However, this weak body is compensated by powerful jaws that protrude from the creature's mouth, making it look like a monster from a sci-fi movie. So, this is the goblin shark, one of the most mysterious fish in the world. This monster is not as fast as its relatives, so it always uses the element of surprise during hunting. It quietly swims up to the prey, hiding in the darkness, and then captures it with its powerful jaws filled with about 100 sharp teeth. They can't see well in the dark, but have electroreceptors on their long noses. Sharks use them to feel the heartbeat of their prey. Goblin sharks live in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. But most often, people see them off the coast of Japan. However, scientists still don't know their exact habitat despite the fact that they are one of the most ancient creatures on Earth. Goblin sharks have been swimming in the dark depths for more than 120 million years, and during this time, they haven't changed their appearance.